Hi everyone, I'm Mike Heilman, President of the Gaming Association of Manitoba Educators. As many of you know, we're gearing up for our 6th Game MTS PD Day on October 25th with a fun night of gaming on October 24th at Windsor Park Collegiate. We're thrilled to have two fantastic keynote speakers this year, Mary Elizabeth Pearson and Brendan Tromblay from Games for Change, a US-based organization that champions game-based learning in classrooms. Before their main presentation at the conference, we want to introduce you to Mary Elizabeth and Brendan. Earlier today, Warren Nightingale, Games Vice President, and I had a great virtual chat with them to learn more about their work and goals with Games for Change. So without further ado, let's dive into that conversation.
Hello viewers, and thank you for clicking this video. Today we're going to be learning about serious games, game design, as we're going to be interviewing our keynotes for our upcoming conference. My name is Warren Nightingale. I'm a principal and founding member of the Gaming Association of Manitoba Educators. With me is my good buddy Mike, who is also a founder and the president of the organization. Mike, give us a hello and let's welcome our guest today.
Hello, good morning or evening, everybody. I am very, very pleased to be here today with our two guests. This came about because last spring, Warren and I had the good fortune of attending South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, the education conference part of it, where we took an invigorating session hosted by Games for Change. We knew that we wanted them to be part of our keynote for this year's conference. So it's my pleasure to welcome Mary Elizabeth Pearson, Director of Curriculum and Professional Development. Wave to her.
Hi, so nice to be here.
Thank you. And with Mary, we would like to welcome Brendan Tromblay, the lead game designer for Games for Change.
Hi, Brendan.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Awesome. Thanks for both being here and giving everybody a chance to meet our keynotes. So I'll start the questions off. I'll start by asking you to share a little about yourselves, your background, and what led you to dedicate yourself to the positive impact that Games for Change, that games cause and games design. Mary, let's start with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mary Elizabeth Pearson, and like I said, I'm the Director of Curriculum and Professional Development for Games for Change, but I have a long history in education. I was an elementary school teacher, a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, and then worked with K-12 as an integration with technology and leadership. I have been an administrator, and my last role in education in a school was as a Director of Technology and Instructional Technology for a school district here with about 10,000 students. And so I have a really good perspective around the large scale and scope of technology use in classrooms for instruction from kindergarten all the way through the leadership side of all of that. And I was brought into games when I was working with a third grade team around Minecraft, when Minecraft first came out, the education edition, and had started working with the Minecraft education team themselves to build professional development that would actually meet teachers' needs for gaming, because when they started, some of the things that they had were really a little bit more high level techie than they were around what we would need as teachers to be able to bring game design into our classroom and gaming. And so as I started partnered with the teachers and was able to, handle kind of the technical aspects of Minecraft, it was kind of difficult to bring into the classroom on the technical side. But once we got that all up and running, what I started to see were students being really, really engaged in the content through the game. So sometimes I had seen, people use games at the end of a lesson, right? Like, okay, you can play this game at the end of the lesson. And with Minecraft, we started using it to start at the beginning and work our way through the lesson. And students it kind of started to build community. It started to bring students who would normally maybe be more quiet and shy up to the forefront. And so that kind of started me on my path around like gaming in the classroom and game design, and what does that actually do for us, and how, like, instead of using those things at the end, if you design from the very beginning, what does that do to the content retention and at the end of the unit or the end of the lesson? And so as I was working through that, flash forward like about 2 years ago, I moved from actually working with a Minecraft team in a contract basis to working with Games for Change and getting this opportunity to really dive into the gaming industry and games for learning. So I've actually learned a lot in the last 2 years, especially from my partner Brendan, too, around what makes a good learning game, because I'd never thought about that as a teacher. And that's kind of what we're hoping to bring to your teachers is, we are a market, right? We have lots of companies that want to sell us things and to bring into our classrooms. And how do we know that what we're bringing in is actually a learning game, or that we know it's a learning game, and then we know it's gamified, that we know it's game-like learning, right? Like we need to know those things so that we can be just better at picking what's going to bring our students what they need, right? So that's kind of me in just a little bit of a nutshell as far as how I have been thinking about bringing games into the classroom and now getting a chance to actually help teachers bring that into the classroom.
Thank you. I
Brendan?
love that.
Wow.
Yeah, and yeah, you're definitely alluding to the fact that I might have some rather spicy opinions about what makes a good learning game and what learning games might not meet those criteria. But we can get there later. So yeah, so talking about my background, I grew up playing video games and games, and a lot of the connections between what the power of play is and the types of things you can learn naturally from games is just something a part of my lived experience. So being in this career is actually really natural for me. Getting to that point was a bit of a journey, right? I was coming of age, in the early 2000s. This entire space didn't exist yet. There wasn't even there weren't, learning games industries. There wasn't a serious games industry. There was barely even like a casual games industry. The only thing was like the AAA games industry, big name companies making games for consoles and maybe PC. And as a gamer, at first I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a game designer and be part of this. And I did some research in that industry and found it was not an industry I would enjoy working in. I would not enjoy being kind of like a tiny cog in a huge machine. I didn't want to be like the artist, making the blades of grass for the next Madden football game. That just wasn't my thing. So I kind of peeled away from the idea of the games industry as I went to college and went into a more generalized, media technology and design program at the Rochester Institute of Technology. It's called New Media Design. And it was a wonderful program because it really gave me an extremely well-rounded set of skills in both technology and design. And in college, I also started to develop this interest in education because, I at first it was like, well, what could I do to make the world a better place and not just, sell sugar water, which, many people in design fields end up doing, which again was not really my interest area. And really thinking, I guess, systemically, education is such a great place to do good in the world. It's where you really empower people to make their lives as good as they can be. I even got to do some, summer campy stuff as a college student, teaching kids how to make their own Flash games because, Flash was the technology du jour. It doesn't really exist anymore. But yeah, I had some great mentors that really like pushed me into this sort of education thing. I think they realized that that was like a good match for me, and I'm really glad they did that. So the great thing about it though is that as I was coming into my, young professional life, this sort of serious games for education industry was coming about. And so I was very easily able to turn my post-college career into this sort of area. I started off at an e-learning company that did cool, like conversation simulations for like having difficult conversations. And then I moved up to a nonprofit called the Institute of Play, who had created a public school in New York City called Quest to Learn. And it is a school that uses game-based learning, systems thinking, design thinking as foundational elements of their school design. And I got to be an embedded game designer in that school, creating curriculum, creating classroom games, creating cool storylines, narratives, characters in collaboration with the teachers directly in that school. And so that's when I really got to absorb all these skills of an educator by learning from all the teachers there. So I have this wonderful privilege of being a trained designer and experienced game designer with a lot of personal experience directly in the education environment. And so Since then, I've used that kind of mixture of skills to create games in nonprofit situations, for-profit situations, digital, non-digital, web-based, and kind of all over for many different age groups, all the way up through like PhD level and many different contexts, including the classroom, informal learning, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that just brings me to Games for Change. Here we get to do teacher programs, student programs. We get to help people who want a learning game made, find the right studio, find the right context for their project. It's a real privilege to work in this space.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
That's so exciting, Mike. I feel like we've already begun our keynote here, but
Yeah.
I do want to ask, like, now with the wealth of experience and the breadth of all the exciting things that are going on in classrooms and what your organization brings, what kind of things do you think our membership will be exposed to and get a taste of in our keynote coming up?
I can take it away a little bit, only
Yeah.
because
Not to give away spoilers. I don't mean to dig in too much, but
no,
already we started getting a flavor of this. But what can we expect on October 25th when you come here to Winnipeg?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing about it is that it's going to be hands-on. I've seen many keynotes, which is where a super awesome charismatic person talks at me for like an hour. That's not what's happening. We're going to be doing game design, and we're going to be doing it in a way that even I personally found early on in my sort of game design career a really useful way to approach it, which is starting off game design in a completely non-digital way. There's the digital thing has its own set of skills that actually has nothing to do with the sort of discipline of putting together an engaging experience. So we're going to be working with just pen and paper and doing game design in a really, really accessible way for everybody. And that's how you can get started on a game design career without having to be a programmer or a digital artist or any of that stuff.
Well, and
Fantastic.
there'll be the charismatic side, hopefully. It won't be boring. Maybe a few bad jokes, as we roll along. We definitely will play into our audience as far as where we see them go as well. I love to do that. I think that you want to tailor the keynote to what's in front of us, right? So as people are asking questions, and hopefully, that's what we expect. We want people to ask questions. We're not afraid to pause where we're at in our sequence of slide deck to be able to answer questions and talk about those, especially because you have a career educator and a game designer for learning in the same room and being able to tie those two together.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to have a dialogue with everybody. That would be wonderful.
That's awesome. Can you give us maybe a sneak peek, if it could be either of you, just one thing that you think teachers can do in their classroom for either gameful thinking, game design, or serious games?
Well, I think one thing that kind of comes from the last question that teachers will be able to walk away with what we do that day with them and take it right to their classroom. So what we're doing with you in that space is something that is real, and you can just grab it and go. And I always looked for that when you're at conferences. I want to know if there's something I can take right away and use in my classroom, and that's definitely something that will happen for people who are participating in what we're doing on Friday.
Yeah, and like without spoiling too much, the activity that a teacher could do and that we're going to introduce is take a simple game that everybody already knows and modify it to make it different and maybe better, question mark, and also go through the design process, the specific steps that we use as game designers in the design process to think of how to make a new game and also to test how successful that new game idea is. And that's exactly what we'll be doing in the session.
Now, Brenda, you mentioned a little bit earlier about what makes lots of thought around what makes for a good learning game, and I imagine we'll unpack a lot of that during our keynote. But what would be just a little snippet to let the appetites of educators about something to think about that goes into what makes for a good learning game, or even just what are some things that you've seen out there that educators are doing, or that's on the landscape of education that's happening that makes for good learning opportunities?
Sure. I mean, so a A really good learning game is one that is going to really take advantage of what makes games good learning tools and not trying to sort of conform too much to maybe a more traditional educational model. So, right, games and gameplay is a doing activity, right? It's active participation by the user. And I would argue that really great learning is also a learning by doing activity, as opposed to learning by being told or learning by, passive, some sort of passive activity. So a really good learning game is one that's going to have you doing the thing that the game is trying to teach you. And this is me trying to sort of avoid the jargon that we tend to use, but there are the things that a game is going to ask you to do over and over and over again, and those are verbs of some kind. So it's not to know something or to be told something, it's to do something. And when that game is asking you to do something that is directly related to the learning that you want them to have, that's when you have a really good learning game. And I can contrast that by saying there are many different learning games out there that are essentially quizzes disguised as games, right? It's like a multiple choice question, except it has like a fancy set of graphics and boop bop sound effects, and that's
So
the
true.
kind of thing I try to avoid, right?
And it might as well just be a worksheet.
Exactly,
Yeah.
a
So
worksheet with a candy coating.
Yeah.
Right.
there'll be definitely opportunities for Brendan and I to share some of those things that we see that are actually to look a little bit deeper, to pull back the curtain a little bit on some of those games that are very popular in the classrooms now that we're using, and be able to there will be a little bit of soapboxing because both of us have some experience that we need to share and say, and people don't always have to agree with us, but we want people to think about what they're using and be, like I said, a great, not just a consumer of these things, but to be able to look at them with through a lens of learning and say, because that's what teachers do best. We know education, we know our content, we know what we want students to learn from these things. So why not use that same lens to look at games? And sometimes I see us not doing that all the time. Like the game comes with the curriculum and we're like, okay, sweet, it must be great, right? And maybe it's not. And so how do we have a better eye for these things that are coming and that we're using in our classrooms, and choosing to spend our time learning, right? Like we don't have a lot of time. So so Brendan and I definitely, Brendan has some very strong opinions about some of the games that we use, and so it's very fun to listen to him do his little stand without
That's
giving anything away.
Well, that's awesome. And we were actually going to end this session asking you to give us maybe some resources or examples, but I think it would be better to just end it as it's coming. Come to the conference.
Awesome.
So,
Yes,
okay.
Fantastic.
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Brendan and Mary Elizabeth. Like, this is so exciting. I think folks are going to get a little bit of flavor from this video in terms of what to expect on October 25th at our gaming conference. We're so appreciative that you were able to carve out some time from your busy days to join us today. So on behalf of GAME, I'd like to thank Mary Elizabeth Pearson and Brendan Tromblay for carving out some time for us today. And we sure look forward to seeing you in person for the gaming conference. And just before we add the details in our notes and the formal sign off, any last little words you want to add to the video?
I think just the resources, like go to gamesforchange.org and look under the G4C Learn section, and there's a lot of resources. There's also the arcade and games, and we'll share those with you at the conference too. But if you want to look at what are some of the games that are out there that students have developed for our Games for Change awards, jump on there and do some looking. We have our student challenge running right now, and it's still in the early stages, so that if someone, we'll talk about the student challenge as well, like if people want to join that with their classrooms and develop games, that's something that we would love to help you guys do as well.
Fantastic.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I could just say if there's some sort of a game that you've been putting off wanting to play, play it before next week, just so that you got some like play experience recently under your belt. I'd love to see it.
Fantastic. And that's such great news. So Folks watching this video, check out the links below. Not only going to get information about the conference, but I also going to get the resources provided for Games for Change. Take a peek at it. You're going to get a flavor of some of the things that the exciting things that are going on, and you get to be exposed to prior to the conference. And I love Brendan too, saying, you know what, do a little bit of play before the game, because here at the game, we were big believers of learning to play, so that way you can play to learn. And that's been our motto from the beginning, and we're such big believers in that. And we're so excited for this conference, and we hope you can join us. Mike, any last words before we go?
Nope, just I'll hop on that, get on and play a game. I know that, as a matter of fact, I'm going to have to get together with our colleagues at Game and do that before the conference as well, because we've been told to. So there we go.
Yeah, we got permission. Yeah. Awesome, everyone. Thanks for watching this video. We look forward to seeing you on the 25th.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Bye.
There you go. Mary Elizabeth and Brendan have definitely got us pumped for their presentation on October 25th. You won't want to miss it. And don't forget, even if you're attending a different Sage group, you're still invited to our social gaming night on October 24th for just $5. That includes supper. Everything's happening at Windsor Park Collegiate. If you haven't registered yet, head over to mbteach.org and sign up. We can't wait to see you for a full day of learning, networking, gaming, and inspiring keynotes. See you soon.